Do you want to know the answer to the question, what is the best e-commerce platform for beginners? In the next few minutes, we're going to be comparing WooCommerce versus Shopify to help you live the dream of an e-commerce website, even if you're tech challenged. My name is ELISE Nelson, and I help tech challenge makers build a profitable e-commerce brand. Thanks for joining me on my YouTube channel, where I offer lessons that are 15 minutes or less to help you grow your e-commerce shop. In this short video, I'm going to share with you a breakdown of Shopify versus WooCommerce and tell you which platform I recommend for your e-commerce business. Before we jump into this maker lesson, I'd love to know if you currently have a website. If so, which platform are you using? And if not, which platforms have you considered? Leave a comment and let me know. Before we get started with the pros and cons and ultimately my suggestion for an e-commerce website, even if you're tech challenged, I want to let you know that I'm giving this advice based on my own personal experiences as a coach for e-commerce makers. I am not just giving you advice based on what I've heard or regurgitating someone else's advice. I have literally seen stats and data, and these are the conclusions that I have personally come to myself. I'm not just repeating what someone else has told me. Now, I have built websites and helped clients with both WooCommerce and Shopify. I have experienced tech glitches from both of them. And I've even had to scrap both types of sites because ultimately the coding was so destroyed by a client that fixing it would have taken longer than just starting from scratch. I have seen sites weighed down with apps and plugins, making them exceedingly slow on both platforms. Now, I will make the suggestion I make because I've seen with my own two eyes the devastation of having a website you cannot maintain, and I would not wish that on my worst enemy, let alone you, Bizzer. We're going to start with the pros and apply to both platforms. In other words, the pros of owning your own website. Number one, it is open 24/7. Everything is in your control, and that's going to include lower transaction fees than using other platforms like Etsy, Amazon, and eBay. You're also going to have the security of owning your own shop where you don't have to worry about being shut down. Your customers will not be referred to other shops to buy the products that you sell because you're only going to have your products on your own website. Email collection is so much easier on your own website than other platforms, and you're going to have the advantage of brand recognition, so people will recognize your brand instead of your brand being overshadowed by the platform's brand. When someone buys from Etsy or eBay or Amazon, they do not think that they are buying from you. They think they are buying from Etsy, Amazon, or eBay. When they buy from your website, they know they're buying from you, and they recognize your brand as who they're making a purchase from. And having that brand recognition, as we've talked about in the video about headers and footers, is incredibly important, especially for trying to get repeat buyers and getting people to talk about your brand to others. Now, let's talk about WooCommerce specifically, the pros for WooCommerce. Number one, it can be the least expensive option for having your own website. Now, there's a caveat here, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, but this is one of the biggest reasons I hear people want to go to WooCommerce, because it's cheaper. And that can be true, and it may not be true. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but that can be the truth. WooCommerce may be cheaper for you. Number two, WooCommerce is exceedingly customizable. You are not restrained by this format that Shopify imposes on its website builders. Now, this is true of other platforms as well. It's not just Shopify that has this format. WooCommerce is much more customizable. So depending upon what it is you need, they may be a better choice for you. And WooCommerce also allows you to have two websites or more for the same price as one. So this is actually not a feature of WooCommerce exactly, but it's actually a feature of your hosting provider, which is what you have to use WooCommerce. When you have a hosting provider and you're using WooCommerce for your shop, you can actually put multiple shops on one service, so you don't have to have multiple fees for each shop. And so that can definitely be an advantage of having a site with WooCommerce instead. Now for the Shopify pros. Number one, it is easy to use, and this is huge. They offer 24-hour support, and they offer many integrations and partnerships that are simple to set up. Before we jump into the rest of this lesson, please like this video and comment with the word control if you love the idea of having control of your brand instead of relinquishing control to the platform. Also, be sure to stick with me to the end of the video to learn your challenge for today and implement what you've learned. Now it's time for the cons. And the cons of owning your own website, regardless of whether it is Shopify or WooCommerce or any other website builder, are that number one, you have control. And I know that I just said you have control as a pro, but this is also a con. What it means when you have control of it is that you have to provide your own traffic. And this is a problem that many e-commerce shop owners experience. It's also one of the reasons I recommend starting on someone else's platform, like Amazon, Etsy, eBay, whatever, because they will bring you traffic. On your own website, you have to be able to bring yourself traffic. And as we all know, as solopreneurs, you don't have time to do all the things at once. So focusing on getting your products ready is a great way to start on someone else's platform. But then having your own website and taking that control means that you don't have to worry about losing your business. Okay, the other thing that it means when you have control of your business is that you have to make your own decisions about which plugins, apps to install or uninstall, which can mess up the coding of your site. And a lot of people don't realize this. As you are trying these apps and plugins out and then uninstalling them, they are leaving behind little bits of code. Well, every time someone loads that website, they now have to wait for that code to load. So this can severely decrease your site speed depending upon how often you are installing and uninstalling apps. The next thing it means when you have control is that it can be expensive. And I don't just mean with your money. I also mean with your time. The maintenance of that website, the upkeep of that website can suck a lot of time and or money depending upon if you're doing it yourself or paying someone else to do it for you. The other thing is you do not have the built-in trust of other platforms. And that is, like we just talked about a minute ago, when someone is buying from your shop on Etsy, they're buying from Etsy and they trust Etsy. It has nothing to do with you. On your website, you do not have this built-in trust. You have to build it yourself. All right, so those are the cons of owning your own website. Now we're going to talk about specific cons of WooCommerce website. The number one con for WooCommerce is that it is complicated. It's going to take a lot of time, especially the initial setup, your continued maintenance. Trying to figure out how to fix errors can be especially time-consuming. Needless to say, it is complicated and it does take a lot of time. Number two, there is no support, and it's difficult and or expensive to find support. You are essentially, when you build a WooCommerce site, and if you do not have someone that is maintaining that for you, you are trying to maintain something that you don't understand. Because unless you are a coder, you do not understand everything that has to do with your site. Plus, depending upon what you have on your site, it can majorly complicate even a knowledgeable programmer's ability to fix your problems or answer your questions. So because you're able to put basically whatever you want on WooCommerce, it makes it much more difficult from a programmer or a coder's perspective to come onto your site and figure out what the problem is, let alone you trying to figure out the problem yourself. Another con for WooCommerce is that the integrations and partnerships are basically a free-for-all. There is no one entity that is trying to make sure you have the ability to integrate with the major players that are important for building your business. They rely solely on outside companies to decide to make the integrations that are needed. What this means is when there's an integration with a specific platform, say a social media platform, it may work, it may not. There's no real oversight to this. And so they may not offer anything at all, and if they do offer something, it may be subpar. And this is a huge con with WooCommerce. The additional side of this is because everything is maintained by various different people, a lot of times they cause conflicts with each other inside your website. And those conflicts may not originally be an issue, but as they update those apps, plugins, and WooCommerce itself, you can suddenly find that your website isn't working properly. All right, so now on to the Shopify Cons. Now, one thing about Shopify that people like to talk about a lot is they may not have good SEO. SEO is search engine optimization. It has to do with showing up in search on places like Google to get people to come to your site that are searching for your products. And the reason I say they may not have good SEO is because depending on who you ask, this may be a problem or it may not. I have heard SEO experts talk about how Shopify is better than many other platforms, and I have heard SEO experts talk about how Shopify is terrible when it comes to SEO. I have never seen any evidence to support either side of this argument, so I'm not going to tell you that it does have bad SEO. I'm going to tell you that it might have bad SEO. The only thing that I've ever seen that makes a logical sense to me that could be a reason that the SEO is not as good on Shopify as other platforms is the naming structure. Now, this may or may not affect SEO depending upon the latest updates in Google and all of these things, but it could affect your SEO. So I'm going to tell you what I mean by the naming structure. Okay, so here we are on my site for Carry Clips. So with the naming structure, what I mean is my website is carryclips.com. And when I go to a product, it is automatically going to put the word products here. and then it'll put whatever you want your product to be called, right? So whatever you end up putting in for your SEO. So you always have products. There's no way for me to make this say carryclips.com/original instead of products/original. And so it forces you to have those 2 slashes, right? So that is the naming structure. Another example, if we went to a specific collection, is it forces you to put the word collection here. So I cannot just have carryclips.com/water bottle holders. I have to have that /collections, and we've got those 2 slashes again. Same thing with any of the pages on your site. If you go to the page, you are going to have the word pages in the middle. And so there's not any way to actually have these hosted on a specific /whatever. It has to be /something/whatever, okay? And so that's the naming structure. And there has been some discussion about how this can hurt you when it comes to SEO. Whether that is actually true, again, I'm not 100% certain, but this is the closest I can come to saying that, yes, this could be true. Maybe the SEO for Shopify is not the absolute best. You cannot control these things. Now, the one thing you can do on Shopify is you can make redirects. So in my redirect, I could put carryclips.com/demo and tell it to automatically send anyone who puts that in to carryclips.com/pages/demo. Google and other search engines will recognize this. So if someone is looking for carryclips.com/demo, it will redirect them to the correct page. But this does not count as the actual page itself. It is a redirect. So that may or may not help with SEO as well. All right, the second con that I often hear for Shopify is that they nickel and dime you with apps. Now, it is definitely true that you can spend a lot of money on apps on Shopify. But this is mostly an issue for novice builders on Shopify because instead of purchasing a theme that has the right features, they use a free theme and then end up buying apps, which end up being very costly in the long run because they have monthly fees. In addition, those apps are actually going to slow down your website speed in many cases. Not always, but a lot of the times. Now, the problem with this being a Shopify-specific complaint is that it is actually true on WooCommerce and Shopify. You shouldn't be installing tons of apps and plugins because you end up with fees and you end up with a slowed down website. So the fact that you can spend a lot of money on apps and plugins is actually true of all platforms. Pretty much any website builder is going to have the ability to buy additional things to change your website and how it functions. And in order to maintain the quickest speeds possible, you really should not be using these on any platform. But because Shopify is set up to be the most basic build with their free themes, a lot of shop owners end up buying multiple apps in order to get the functionality they want. And so that's why this becomes a Shopify specific issue, even though it's actually an issue on any website. If you want more help with your e-commerce brand, be sure to subscribe and sign up for notifications so that you don't miss any of my videos that are 15 minutes or less to help you grow your e-commerce shop. So now that we've discussed the pros and cons of both WooCommerce and Shopify and of just having a website in general, who do I recommend you use to build your website? Now, as always, one of the things I get accused of is that I don't give a single answer, and this is going to be the same here. I have 2 answers depending upon who you are and where you are in your business. If you are tech challenged or a new business owner or a solopreneur or do not have the finances to hire a developer to maintain your website, or you do not need more than one website, then you should have your website on Shopify. Because it is the simplest option, they have 24/7 support, there is tons of help documentation. This is going to be the easiest thing for you to do. This is going to be the easiest way for you to have a site that isn't going to take all of your time and suck it out of your business. However, if you are tech savvy, you are an established business owner, you have support staff, you have the finances to hire a web developer to maintain your website, and or you need more than one website, then you should really investigate what exactly you need before deciding. So for those of you who are these things, it is going to be harder for you to choose. You're going to still have to look into this more to see which one is going to be better. You may want to consider WooCommerce, but Shopify may still be the right answer for you. I have several clients who make well over $100,000 a year, so they can definitely afford to pay for a web developer to take care of their website and or hire someone who, when they have issues, but they still use Shopify because it is so easy for them to use. They don't want to completely relinquish control of their website, and they don't have the time to deal with all the nuances of WooCommerce. That being said, WooCommerce is more customizable than Shopify and allows for multiple websites while paying for only one hosting option, as we talked about earlier. So in cases of extremely custom websites that need special coding or need to host multiple sites, WooCommerce can be the right choice. One final note about choosing WooCommerce and Shopify. If the reason you want to build your site with WooCommerce is because you think that it will be cheaper than Shopify, you need to consider that cheap domain hosting that is available for WooCommerce is typically short-term pricing, and in the long run, those hosting fees will increase. And the solution I always get from everybody is, well, I'll just switch domain hosting. Now, switching domain hosting every few years so that you can keep getting introductory rates is certainly possible. But more often than not, the transfer of the website from one domain host to another ends up being a headache. It can cause some type of glitch or problem, and you will have to then deal with that. So I think that headache may not be worth the price difference between the two options. And then the likelihood of you not ever needing any developer help throughout the life of your website is so incredibly low. That means you need to consider the cost of having help into the cost of your website on WooCommerce. So the cost of bringing in a developer to help with technical issues needs to be included in what you think of the cost of your website is. Now, apps and plugins can be expensive on both platforms, and on WooCommerce may be necessary to have a functional site. Things like Elementor and a backup service. So those things also need to be included in the cost of your website. So thinking that the reason you're going to choose WooCommerce is because it's cheaper, you really need to look into the full details of that. You're going to be able to get free help through Shopify. With WooCommerce, that's really not an option. And backup service, all of these things, you don't need to add something like Elementor necessarily for Shopify to make it work. So you really want to consider your total cost, not just your hosting fees, when you're considering the cost of having a WooCommerce site. Now, even after all those considerations, it may still be cheaper monetarily to build with WooCommerce. But the stress of not knowing who to ask for help when there's a problem, and there always are problems, is that really worth the price difference? So that would be what I would ask of you. Is it easier for you in the long run to know that you have a simple to use system that you always have help, or is it easier for you in the long run to have a possibly cheaper system that you may have struggled to get help with? And before I let you go, I want to offer you one incredibly important piece of advice. I would recommend that you consider having your website built instead of building it by yourself or with a course that teaches you how to do it. And the reason is because there is a huge, huge problem with e-commerce websites today. They are not built for sales. I've seen this with developers who are building sites. I've seen this in courses that are teaching how to build sites. I've seen this so many times, it's staggering to me that this is acceptable in this industry. Websites are being built to be pretty and give business owners the satisfaction of saying they have a website, but they are not being built for sales. Because of this, I highly recommend having someone who is knowledgeable in e-commerce purchase conversion. That's the key. They have to be knowledgeable in e-commerce purchase conversion, not just a website developer. They have to actually know what gets sales to set up your website, or at a minimum, to teach you how to set up your website yourself before building a site that will not convert to sales. Because if you build a site that's not going to give you sales, there's no point in having that website unless all you need is an ego boost. And that's what's happening. These developers are building sites to give shop owners an ego boost of saying that they have a website. If that's all you want, then by all means. But most of us want to actually make sales. And in that case, you need to make sure that who you trust to help you knows what they're talking about. Now, for a little transparency, I am a Shopify affiliate. I am a website builder. I offer a website review call to give advice on how to improve your website. I have also written a book about how to improve your purchase conversion. I would absolutely love to help you with your website, but that is not why I'm giving this advice. I don't care if you work with me or not. I just don't want you to waste your time and or money on something that will not work for you, because I've seen this happen so many times to other shop owners. So please really think about what you are doing before having your website built with WooCommerce or Shopify. Today's question was, do you currently have a website? If so, which platform are you using? If not, which platforms have you considered? Leave a comment and let me know. Now be sure to check out the rest of the videos in this playlist to learn more about how to build a website for sales. Plus, be sure to watch my Metrical playlist to learn all about my favorite social media scheduler. The links for both of those playlists, of course, are in the description of this video. To get help with your e-commerce website, even if you're tech challenged, be sure to check out all the links in the description for my website review call, website building services, and strategy sessions. You can also grab my book for website help, Browser versus Buyer, Optimize Your E-commerce website and get more sales. The challenge for today is actually doubled. There are 2 challenges for you today. If you already have a website, your challenge is to look at your purchase conversion rate. If it is between 1% and 2%, then give yourself a pat on the back because you are average. If it is above 2%, then go get yourself a cookie because you're above average. If it is below 1%, then throw yourself a party because you have tons of room for improvement. No matter what your conversion rate is, knowing it is half the battle. So congratulations, comment "I know" right here on this video once you've taken a look. If you do not already have a website, but you are planning to have one at any point in the future, then I challenge you to look into conversion rate optimization before building your site. You can do this by reading my book. It's a short read, maybe an hour or 2, doing a Google search, or by committing to watch all the videos in this series to learn my tips and tricks to improve your purchase conversion. Then when you're ready, be sure to implement those tactics into your website. Comment "soon" below if you don't yet have a website. Make sure that you're subscribed to my channel because on Wednesday, I will be randomly picking one of the comments below, and if you're subscribed to the channel, you'll win a free ticket to my social media challenge that starts April 4th called the 7-Minute a Day Social Media Challenge. Best of luck to you all. Don't forget to live your dream every single day, and I will see you in the next video.